Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Quake Nightmare walkthrough, and we are moving on to episode 2, The Realm of Black Magic. So one of the cool things about Quake is that its world hub exists for a good reason. It exists so that you can take on the levels in any order that you would like. So if you want to jump straight to episode 4 and take on some absolute nastiness, you can. But if you want to do them in the 1, 2, 3, 4 order that potentially the balance is meant to be done, then you can do that as well. And episode 1 exists to kind of be the introduction. It gives you a whole host of different things, it introduces some interesting problems, it gives you some tools, but it doesn't really go that hard. And then the later ones, they go a lot harder. So moving now into episode 2, we're going to see a step up, and the first step up is that guy. That guy's called an Enforcer. He is a tankier version of a grunt, and instead of having a hit scan shotgun, he has a projectile gun. And you can see his projectile, it's actually kind of slow. It's the kind of slow where you can strafe out of the way of it preemptively, and then strafe back into it accidentally, because it's not as fast as you think it is. But he has the same weakness as the standard grunt, so if you shoot him with the shotgun, you'll get a flinch. And you can use this to go closer to do more damage, or to swap to something stronger and put him down. But another thing that happens with Quake, which is kind of interesting, which is another holdover from this kind of genre of shooters and this ethos of shooting, is that they strip all your equipment at the start and give you the shotgun. I don't personally mind it too much as a design mechanic, because it feels like when you're moving through the level and you pick up the old familiars and the old favourites that you suddenly feel more capable and you're back where you were, and then they generally hand it out in a nicely paced manner. But what it does lead to is if anything goes wrong and you can't go back on your save, when you level select in this game, you lose everything. And I actually fucked my save by saving into damage when I was trying to do the no damage nightmare on the final world. And when I reloaded, it put me on that level with no guns. And that level with no guns is kind of absurd. It can still be totally done, don't get me wrong, if you're good at Quake. But it's not something that I want to be doing in a walkthrough that's meant to help people that aren't that good at Quake, you know? And if you want to see absolutely superb Quake play, there's Quake done quick and Quake done quicker and all that, and it's just mind-boggling. Those players are insane. But you're probably watching this because either you like the channel or maybe you're struggling on this version of the game. So you can't play like that, you know? You can't do what they do with all the crazy rocket jumps and grenade boosts and damage boosting and jumping and everything. So, like myself, when I ended up saving myself into that shit situation, I got really lucky because there was only, I think, 2 levels left before the end of the game, and there's a console command that lets you skip between the levels, which is handy. But I thought it was just a bit of an oversight for them not to enable you to kind of reload where you were when you had all the stuff that you had. And you know me, guys, I'm not looking for an easier ride. I'm not looking for the game not to be difficult. I want the game to be difficult. I like difficult games, you know, I like to try, I like to improve, and I like to persevere. But one thing I don't like is being punished because I do a bad save and then essentially having my entire save file ruined. Because what happened is, I reloaded the level at the end of the game and I beat those levels, and then when I went back to the hub, I had not beat episode 1, 2 and 3 because of course I loaded game. So I'd essentially blocked myself from facing the final boss. And I would have had to play the entire game again because they'd not put in some quality of life to stop this from happening. And it is my fault, fundamentally. I was the person that saved into damage, even though the damage is fucking stupid because it was a door closing, which I just think is absurd. I don't know why a door would hurt you, but welcome to Quake and to brutal game design. But that's, you know, beside the point. So luckily I was able to circumnavigate these issues and finish the walkthrough, but it's just a little bit unfortunate that it had to be that way, you know? But this is still Grunt City, Rottweiler City, and occasional Enforcers. The shotgun is so strong against the grunts. Use your speed, use your accuracy. Take them down. And now you've got the super shotgun, you've got no excuse up close not to deal out some incredible amounts of pain. You might have also noticed with the inputs that you can kind of see what I'm doing. I like to add it on games that have movement so that you can see the interesting movements that you can do with them. And I think most people at this moment know that Quake has the strafe jumping, the air strafing, the bunny hopping as some people call it. There's the zigzag jumping and stuff. There's a lot of advanced movement in this game, and I'm not very good at it. But I do like to try and have a go. Speaking of not very good at movement, I can't even jump on this box. This was an interesting moment of not understanding why I couldn't hit that jump, but there you go. But the idea of the movement is, when you're moving, I think it's diagonally, or to the left or the right, you get this, when you move forward and to the right or to the left, you get this weird speed vector increase. I watched this wonderful video on YouTube with the science of bunny hopping, and it was very fascinating, but I'm too stupid to recount it now. But fundamentally, you inherit some kind of speed multiplier when you move diagonally. So if you jump and you hold like left as you're moving left and right as you're moving right, and you kind of swing the camera between the two so that it's got that turning as you do it and you're applying that multiplier, you inherit this momentum. And if you do it correctly with really good time jumps and really good time like turns and stuff, you move a hell of a lot faster than you were probably intended to move. It is a form of a bug in the game that went on to be one of the coolest movement mechanics in the history of video games. And I think you can even do it in this game by holding forward. You can even move faster in this game holding forward and mashing left and right, because you get this weird zig boost that they talk about in the early days of Quake. But this mechanic is something that's carried over into the Source engine, because the Source engine, I think, isn't it like a heavily modified Quake engine? And it's also something that was, I mean, think about all the games that took the Quake engine. Like, any game you can pretty think of took the Quake engine in some way and built off it and has some legacy Quake tech in there. So now when you see games that have bunny hopping, now when you watch things like Quake Champions, which is the most recent iteration of bunny hopping, and the systems that were born in this game, you can see where they've taken it and where it's gone and how advanced it is and how amazing it is. And it's definitely something to look into. So if you're ever wondering when I'm playing if I'm doing it correctly in those rare moments that I do, how do you do that? If you just look into Quake strafe jumping or bunny hopping, you'll be able to find out what's going on. And speaking of what's going on, you'll notice there is a wonderful blue filter on the screen right now. It's Minority Report up in here. And this is quad damage, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. It turns every gun into a rather serviceable option for every situation, and I absolutely adore it. I'm not a big fan of the screen tint, but being able to two-shot stuff with the shotgun is delightful. And whenever you get that, you want to go on the biggest rampage you can, because it's definitely going to save you some time. And speaking of saving some time, I get lost here again. So when you go up to that bit where I fell into the water, there's a platform that rises out of the water, and it doesn't always do it because the lifts and the elevators in this game are mad spotty. So I went up to it and nothing happened, and I wandered around for about 5 minutes, and I'm going to trim that out because it's pretty stupid. But this door has a fiend, and it also has an ogre. The fiend puts pressure, the ogre sends grenades your way. Use everything you can to put him down. I probably should talk... This is the platform, by the way, that goes into the water. This goes back up, and this is the way you're supposed to go. And it took me a while to remember that that was a thing. But talking about the bindings earlier, I didn't fully explain what I mentioned when I talked about how you can accidentally bind yourself into cheat codes, and the game should let you bind things a lot more simply than it does, and it's absurd to me that you can't get access to that in modern day. That just seems really stupid. But bindings in Quake, I think, are absolutely phenomenal. Because in this game, the only thing you have to do to interact with something is walk into it or step on it. So you don't have to have any keys for interaction. There's no keys for melee. The only keys you have are change weapons and move. So that frees up a lot of buttons you would normally use. So for instance, in this game, I have my super shotgun on E, and I have my super nail gun on Q. And then I have the rocket launcher on F, and I have the grenade launcher on C. And I know when I'm moving, I can press between these buttons to chain between these weapons to put out a large amount of damage quite quickly. And in Quake, it doesn't quite have the crazy weapon swapping that you can see in things like Doom Eternal, because that game has embraced it and taken it to the next level. But it does swap between the weapons, and you can link together some interesting combinations. But what happens, guys, is because you have to bind things in the console, and I only wanted to bind the guns that I liked, I don't have a binding for the normal shotgun. I don't have a binding for the normal nail gun. So unless I have the weapons that I like, I can't really move between them in a concise fashion, because I didn't remember what keys they were put on, and I messed with some of the keys so that I could make my bindings work. So if you ever see me like not swapping to the normal nail gun when I have it, it's because I just don't have the binding. And if you ever see it say no weapon in the top left, it's because I'm trying to swap to a gun I haven't picked up yet. As I mentioned earlier, the new episodes bring you back to having just the shotgun and you have to find your gear again. And there are many times when I try to do certain combos on certain enemies and I simply don't have the tools. So if you ever see that, you know what that means. But this is a Hell Knight, right? Or a Death Knight. I forget his name. He might be a Death Knight. He is an upgraded version of those other knights, and he is incredibly tanky. He charges at you aggressively trying to slash you, and then when you get at a distance, he fires black magic at you, which is this interesting projectile that prongs and forks out towards you, which you can dodge it on sight, which is really nice. He is a particularly difficult enemy, and especially in close quarters, because he body blocks the living shit out of you. And there's a DLC, I think it's the Dissolution of it, or it might be Dimension of the Past. About halfway through Dimension of the Past, they get absolutely obsessed with this enemy. And I have no idea why, but they do. And it kind of lowers the quality for me, because I just don't really like getting mobbed by needless spam of enemy. But keep moving forward, picking up the nails with the 9-inch nail logo on them, because Trent Reznor did the soundtrack, and it's a nice little bit of a shout out to him. And then we'll continue on through this dungeon. It's kind of interesting that you can't pick up that armor unless you're under 50. I find that to be quite weird, that. I wonder if that's one of those things where it's just a programming thing they couldn't get around, or if it's a balance conceit, because it would have been really nice to top my armor up, but they just don't want you to do that unless you're at a certain threshold. So if I were to lose more HP and then go and grab it, it would give it me... There's a fiend here, by the way. This fiend, really easy to die to him, because he's super good at doing these hops here, and if he hits you with those hops, it's pretty much a one-hit kill. It does a lot of damage. Something I should say as well, guys, you might be watching this and being like, that doesn't happen for me, that's not how my game runs, I've never seen that, I don't know why you're complaining about that. I don't know if the stuff that happens in this game that's really, really odd with like the elevators and some of the phantom hits and just some of the oddities that happen with stuff not working correctly, it might be to do with the fact I'm running the game on 240 FPS. Because one thing that I've noticed with old games is sometimes high frame rates lead to strange things. There's a trap coming up here, by the way. When you grab this key, it's going to spawn a bunch of those Hell Knights. So be very careful here. It's super easy to die, but you do have grenades, and the grenades do incredible damage in that particular fight, and just in general, if you can direct impact them. But I think that there are oddities in Quake when you're moving at higher frame rates that you might not see if you're playing it perhaps on console, so if you don't have any of the problems that I'm having, that's awesome, I'm happy for you. It's just a side effect of the version of the game that I'm playing. And I don't know if there's any benefits or any disadvantages, because sometimes there is, you know, sometimes it does change things. But I haven't looked into it, and it's not that I don't care, it's more so that I don't need to know, you know. If the game is harder because of the frame rate, I'll deal with it. If the game's easier because of the frame rate, I won't notice, you know, because it's all I know, it's the only frame of reference that I have. And, oh look, they're fighting, you see them? They're doing the infighting. God, I love that, that's so cool. And then we've got 2 pieces of healing there, and we drop a nice quick save. There's me trying to change this. Oh, this is really hard, this. This is the first part when I was recording, when I thought, really guys? This is kind of lame. So, you've heard me already say that I think that the elegance and the design in this game is next level. It's so reserved and refined for the time it came out. This is weird, this bit. This whole sequence, I think, is designed to try to make those traps kill the enemies for you, because they spawn just a ludicrous amount of dudes in a super tiny hall, and it's really hard to kill them without just trading, because there's nowhere to strafe. There's like nowhere to go. And I think they just want you to do this. I think they want you to bait them and let the nail gun do the rest. And I don't really like doing this personally, I think this is lame. But I'm going to do it because I couldn't run past them. I tried to run past this corner so many times and they body block you because it's so claustrophobic. So that level right there for me is one of the few instances where I kind of went, wow, this is not as good as it could be. But I get why it exists. It is an interesting puzzle to solve. I just think that most of the Quake design is way better than that. But deal with the Beef Knight, the big old Skeletor dude. And then we're going to drop into the water, grab some grenades, grab some nails, grab the super nail gun if you don't have it. The game will tell you as well, guys, if you try to move to the next zone, go through a slip gate and you haven't picked up a weapon, it will warn you that you have not picked up something important. which I think is a nice touch, even though you don't need... Like, you don't need most of the guns. As long as you've got certain tools, you can get through any situation. You could do the whole game with a standard shotgun if you wanted to. Because that's how well designed it is. And admittedly, you can run past a lot of encounters. You don't have to fight like I'm doing. But you know me, folks, if you're familiar with the channel. Like, I like the fighting. I'm not a big fan of fighting the zombies, I must admit, because I feel like the zombies are just kind of pointless. But everything else, bring it on. Let's do this. It's interesting as well, because when you look into some of the aspects of Quake and post-release and some of the support by the different people, a lot of the thought or the think that you see seems to be overwhelmingly positive on the DLC stuff. Like, look at that doorway there. Push around the doorway. What is that? That's 3 ogres fighting a knight. And that works because there's that knight there distracting them. And then when you play the DLC stuff, that would have been like 4 ogres and no knight. And they would have all been staring at you and all firing grenades. And I feel like it's moments like that where the difference in design is not realised. Oh, here's 2 fiends just waiting for you, but you get the rocket launcher. Be careful jumping in the water here. I didn't mean to do it. Right there. I got very lucky with that. It kind of glanced me instead of hitting me directly. I don't know if the armour took some of the hit for me, but be very careful challenging fiends like that unless you can get off their line, because they definitely like to move line to line. Like, you're looking at a bishop there on a chessboard, and if you're in his way, he's cleaning through you. Fortunately, the bishop doesn't move like the queen, so he has lots of troubles unless you're on his particular angle. But when you get on that angle, he's really, really, really dangerous. And I love his design as well. I think he's interesting like that. I think there could have probably been another version of him as well. Like maybe a more dangerous version that was a little bit faster, but a little weaker. Because I like the idea of him taking not much damage at all, but hitting like a truck. And I think one of the reasons why the enemies in Quake do take a decent amount of chunking is because of the limitations of the hardware. I was told by a member of my community that the reason why there aren't that many enemies in some of the Quake missions, in particular the campaign. Look at that, dude, he chunked me. Whew, getting my ass kicked right now. One of the reasons why the numbers are so low is because of limitations in hardware and understanding how to make the engine work and everything. And I think that made it a better game, I really do. I truly do. But it also made it so that you couldn't just chew through the enemies so quickly, like you did in, for instance, Doom, where... isn't it one shotgun blast that puts down the normal grunts if you hit them right? And admittedly here, it's only 2 shells to put down the grunt, but that's twice as much resilience than that game, you know? And you do feel it. And ooh, that was a really good grenade. Look at that, the dirty bastard. This is where you want to get really creative with splash damage so that you don't have to risk moments such as that, because the AI is really, really good in this game, and they're very clever when it comes to doing stuff with grenades. This is a really dangerous part. I don't know how I survived this. That's 2 fiends, a scrag, and an ogre just absolutely shelling me. And luckily, the stairs here and the pathing is the only reason I'm alive, because this guy just can't quite figure it out. And I'm doing everything I can to disincentivize him from coming up here. And looks like that scrag is stuck in the wall, but I don't think he is. I think he's just having a break. But it's fun, you know. It's fun and it's hectic and it's crazy. And we get some armor there by using the key. One thing that is worth noting as well, folks, if you are having a hard time with Nightmare on this game, and you can't replicate strategies that you see in this video, for instance, look for the secrets. A lot of the secrets give you absurd amount of healing, absurd amount of armor. They might even give you, you know, resources that I don't currently have. You might be able to run around with the Thunderbolt, and the lightning gun in this game is probably one of my favourite super weapons in any game, because it rewards aim. And I've never played Quake on controller. Well, Quake 1, I should say. I've played Quake 2 on controller for a ton of time on the N64, and what a controller that was, ladies and gentlemen. But I don't know how difficult this game is to play on pad. When it comes to how generous the aim is, if it's got any aim at all, because it wouldn't surprise me if this game had no aim assist. And I think it'd probably be absolutely fine without it too, because that's just one of the things that happens. Sometimes games turn aim assist off, and it's not a big deal. Sometimes, you know, games crank aim assist, you know, if you remember the good old PS2 days and the N64 days, and the current days, unfortunately. This is really dangerous, this too, because look at this. This is nuts, this part. Luckily, I've got this nice cheeky peek on this shambler, so he can't hit me with his lightning, and I'm just gonna tease him with the shotgun. And the thing I love about the campaign compared to the DLCs is you don't run out of ammo that much for your shotgun. There's no moments where you're running around with that shitty axe, wishing you were in a better situation. Because I've got 70 shells right now, and I'm not using them in the best way because I've got so many I can just kind of go with it. But there were legitimate moments when I beat the DLCs where I had no ammo. There is a mission in Dimension of the Past that does an homage to the final boss in this game, and it's way worse, way more gauntletty, and way more dangerous. And the final sequence in that mission, I was stood under a bridge that had 2 shamblers on it and like ogres or something, and I had an axe. And I had to pretty much repeatedly run around a corner, run across the bridge and hope they didn't kill me. And it only took me about 5 or 6 attempts, which is not much in the grand scheme of things. But it was kind of not cool, you know? It's not so much the, oh well, you didn't suffer too long. It's more so the, why do they allow you to suffer at all? And I'm not somebody that plays like an absolute clown the whole time, missing all my shots, you know? I was pretty tanked when I was doing it. I was essentially just an Abrams tank, just wrecking everything, because I'd been playing nothing but Quake. So my movement was sharp, my aim was sharp, you know, I was all warmed up, and I still had no bullets. I had very limited resources. And it's really funny too, because when I did my stream of this game, when I was first checking it out before I covered it on YouTube, I got to the final boss and that big old gauntlet there, and I was wondering to myself, how the hell am I going to do this on Nightmare? Because this is on normal, and I got my ass kicked, and I thought it was really, really hard. I didn't really understand what I was meant to do. I couldn't understand how you meant to do it right. Like, is there a right way of doing this? Am I doing it wrong? And it was just dealing with all the enemies with the resources that they give you. And then when I came back after beating all the DLCs on Nightmare, and I started recording this, when I got to that final area, I did it first attempt, and it was easy. It just goes to show, doesn't it, how you change your perspective by playing. I've got quad damage here, so I don't have to run away from the shambler. I can just challenge everything. And I'm going to challenge everything, because this is so much damage. What a beautiful power-up. And then right now, I should have carried it down here, but I got really lucky. This is a very dangerous room, and I'm firing explosives everywhere and getting away with it, because welcome to Quake. But just, what a cool fight, right? Claustrophobic, full of terror, full of danger. Just do what you can to survive and push the enemy back. I really like that fight. It would be even better if I'd have gone in with big old dirty fat damage, but you can't always get what you want. And I thought there was going to be a shambler through that door. I almost always fear a shambler at the end of the missions now, because when in doubt, they do throw the random shambler at you. This is another interesting one with the Hell Knight and the Ogre, which I've got a page next to me, because I was intending to know the names of the enemies. And usually on Premiere I can't do other things while I'm recording, but I can now. He's called a Death Knight, that guy. There you go, guys, the more you know. I keep getting my nomenclature mixed up with Doom, which I'm very much looking forward to playing more Doom now the temperature's gone down, because it was impossible to play any bloody video games in my room as of late. But now, the gaming season is on, and hopefully that's an exciting predicament on YouTube, because my walkthroughs have been a little slow at the moment, because there's been a few that I want to cover. There's been a few that I'm working on that you're going to see, and of course you're going to see this. I don't know how many people are going to be interested in this, unfortunately, because Quake is one of those games where you mention it to people nowadays and they're like, what's that really old game? And it's a little sad that people can't see quality for what quality is, and instead just buy every microtransaction battle pass and perpetuate this cycle of dogshit games. But I can't change your mind if you want to do that, and it's not really my place to try. But Quake is awesome, and thank you for watching this, because hopefully watching this is awesome too. When I was recording it, I did try my best to make the gameplay as interesting as I could, and to try to kick as much ass as I could, and hopefully I can sometimes be successful at that. I always fail that jump for some reason, and I don't really know why, but luckily on that time I grabbed it. That's one of those where it's just a little bit farther than I'd like it to be, comfortably. But a couple more Death Knights coming here now, slashing their swords, whole bunch of these guys, and you'll see just here just how beefy they can be. This is why you want to use your grenades if you can, but I swapped to something just then and I don't think I had them. Also guys, if you're seeing any stutters here, it's not the video, it's the game. For some reason, the more I played Quake, every so often there'd be times when I booted it where the game would stutter a decent amount. And I don't really know what that was. Luckily, I could reset the game and put it back on and it would generally fix. Look at that grenade. Look at that, guys. Did you see that? Absolute insanity. The stuff they do with that grenade, dude. They're like master pool players, but instead of using a Q, they've got this crazy barrel. Also, be very careful standing directly in front of the ogre like that. He's going to fire that grenade. You can just sidestep it, which makes it kind of simple, especially if you're very practiced and you've been playing a long time. You'll just sidestep that shit like it's nothing. But if you don't have that tell and you don't have that read, it'll be kind of difficult to get away from those. So never be directly in front of them. It's kind of a good piece of advice for most enemies in this game. Directly in front of them is danger, you know. But one thing that coming back to this does really make me lament, and it's like a threnody, isn't it? This notion of Quake campaign. I wonder how many people don't even know that Quake started as a single player thing. And you might be thinking, everybody knows that, Chris, come on now, what are you doing? You're being condescending. And I'm not intending to be, but you'd be surprised, right? I'm always surprised. YouTube teaches me lots and lots of things that I never thought I would end up learning from a website as dog shit as this one. But it teaches you so much about our species and about gamers. It's kind of interesting for that, just on a purely social aspect, like social psychological aspect. Because the things that I thought everybody knew, they don't. And you kind of can't force your mentality and your perspective on people, because not everybody views the world with your lens. Look at that grenade, by the way. That guy's a fucking wizard. Absolute wizard. Be careful here, because there's a bit of a nasty trap here with fiends. Luckily, you've got quad damage. No, it's not quad damage, sorry. It's the biosuit, isn't it? Look at him! Look at that! What a beast! This is so dangerous, but you've got so much HP that it's okay. That was just crazy. I love it when Quake gets like that. It's just absolutely absurd. But it only gets like that because they give you a decent amount of enemies that are placed in a way that's creative. When you go into a room and it's just 50 fucking enemies, it's just like, what were they even thinking here? That's when the design just kind of becomes lazy and dumb. But Quake now is a multiplayer thing, fundamentally. When people think Quake, usually they think multiplayer. They think incredibly addictive multiplayer, right? When you think Quake Champions, you think incredibly difficult, high skill ceiling, not very accessible because it's got this old school arena blood in it, and you've got to learn to play those games, and the difference between a good player and a bad player in those games is night and day because there's no equalizers. There's no like forced multiplier of skill for the skillless. There's no fucking welfare checks for garbage players to compete with people who have hundreds of hours. That is a game where when you know what you are doing, you will always beat a player who does not. There's almost no planet where you lose because skill is the sole driving factor. Problem is, video games don't sell when they're like that. Video games don't make the most money when they are balanced around the better player winning. Video games aren't survival of the fittest in the sense that you are better at said action than the other people. Video games are survival of the fattest, survival of the sloths, you know, survival of the most slovenly playstyle and instant gratification, don't want to earn it, don't want to try, don't want to care, you know, just want to just sleepwalk through your own fucking life in some somnambulous dream. That's what modern video games is, and that's what sells. It's mediocrity, it's dog shit, it's terrible. Ooh, I don't know what's going on this particular segment of the game, but I've never done this part without taking damage from drowning. Am I missing out something here, Quake Masters? Is there something that I forgot to do? Because it seems like this journey is just long enough that you always start drowning before you get to the air. And I'd like to understand that a bit more, but I keep forgetting to Google it. So thank you in advance. But people think Quake Champions, they think this game that's potentially not for them because they jumped on ranked, or they jumped on a public match and they got absolutely bodied by things they couldn't even understand because they were running around with the starting weapon, they had no armor, and then they were getting lightning gunned and like fucking rail gunned, and it was just miserable. They were getting killed by people they couldn't see who were flying through the sky. What does that remind you of, you know? Reminds you of all games with skill ceilings that are very, very high, right? And that's what Quake is to a lot of people. You move back from that, you've got like Quake Enemy Territories, you've got Quake 4, which was kind of weird. Then you've got Quake Arena, Quake 3, which is one of the most legendary arena like PvP games ever made. You know, that and Unreal Tournament. Can you think of a more deserving title for just the masters of the arena? They're gods. They're in the pantheon for those games. They made that genre, they redefined it, and they sent it into the stratosphere of incredibly high-skill arcade first-person shooter multiplayer. But can you imagine if Quake 3 had a proper single-player? Look at this room. Dude, this room is sick. Can they leave it? Look how many dudes is in that room. Terrifying. I have the advantage, though. I have the high ground, Anakin. You can't fuck with this. What a terrifying door to open. A portal to hell. I love that. A wonderful surprise at the end. But if you think about it, guys, Quake 3 was fundamentally multiplayer, wasn't it? And its single player was, I think, against bots, maybe? Some kind of scenarios where you do different maps in deathmatch. Can you imagine if Quake 3 had a campaign like this, with all those cool weapons? Being able to swap between all those wonderful additions to the arsenal? To me, that would be like the coolest thing in the world. Because I played Quake 3 Arena. I played that multiplayer a decent amount, and it was solid. It was really, really good. I didn't play it on PC because I'm a scrub, but I enjoyed it for what it was on all the consoles that I played it on, and I just think can you imagine if it had such a sick crafted single player with a nice, elegant and disciplined brush for enemy design and levels and pacing, with that wonderful arsenal to play with? I think it would just be phenomenal. And I don't know if any version of that exists in any way, or if there's some kind of like mod or something that did that, because there probably is nowadays. If you look at things like Project Plutonium and Brutal Doom and Ultimate Doom, and there's like a million versions of Doom now with so much shit in them. They've got so much love from people that are so passionate. It's unbelievable. And then you've got Call of Duty Vanguard that can't even do fucking basic functionality. Basic settings don't work in that game. Multi-billion-dollar franchise from a multi-billion-dollar company, and they can't even understand the fucking concept of a functioning video game. Unbelievable. Quake is too good for this world, dude. So is anything that's skillful. It just reminds me of Titanfall. Titanfall's another one of those victims of a game that was just... It gave good players too much of an advantage because they earned it. Video games now don't want you to earn your advantage for some reason, and I don't find it to be anything the human race should ever adhere to do, you know? Like, if only getting food was as easy as video games now, we'd probably be quite the utopia, as much as utopias can't exist, because by their very definition, they simply just can't. But it's interesting, isn't it, you know? Like, I've been playing a couple of the more recent games that were released and hope to cover them on YouTube, and when I played them, they were just shite, for lack of a better word. Just really, really bad. Really, really brain dead, really, really boring, really, really easy, nothing to learn, nothing to gain. Like, it's not why I play video games, and not everybody plays video games for the same reason. I think we can all agree, everybody's got their own thing. But I think... This is a tough level, this, by the way, guys. This is a really tough level. I always remember this bridge part because this is some tricky stuff. But the one thing I think we can all agree on when it comes to video games is I want a video game to show me something I haven't seen. I want a video game to do something that I'm either expecting or I'm not expecting, to the level that I want or I don't know I want, you know? And the more you do something, the more that dream becomes difficult to realise. Both sides here have fiends, and you need to be careful backpedaling, because if you fall off, you're in the water, and it gets a bit awkward. Like, I think that's what's so refreshing about Quake when I come back to it and I play it, because it always feels great, and it's always fun to play, and it came out in 1996. Games that came out in 1996 for me are all classic games from my childhood, and most of them have aged rather well, all considered. But this is a game that could come out right now. If you told me that this was an indie game on good old games, I would believe you. And I would be stunned. Absolutely stunned. And then when you look into the development of the game, you realise that it was actually quite troubled. Because they'd already got this hit with Doom, and there was all these expectations, there was all these stresses of following Doom with this new game. And then you realise that the development cycle was kind of interrupted and not as smooth as it could have been. Like, John Romero was AWOL for some reason. You know, they got these different people doing different level designs, so you had a person in charge of each episode, which is why all the episodes feel kind of instanced and different, because they essentially were. And then you realise that in spite of all these problems that happened with the, you know, all the history in Quake and the development cycle and the pressures and just the standard production woes. Every production has woes, guys. Nothing goes as planned all the time, and especially on something as big as game production and a company like that at that time, you're not going to get everything working smoothly. It's just the way of the world. And in spite of all those issues, the game is still this goddamn good. And not only is it still this goddamn good, but it's this good for this long. Like, fundamentally so solid and so sound that it's just legit. Oh, another thing as well, guys, you might have been noticing, sometimes when you save state, the game does like a delayed frame, a bit of a stutter on the delivery of the frames. When I was talking about stutters on the game earlier, it wasn't to do with save states. It's a different type of stutter. And I did my best to re-record to get rid of those, but the save state one, the reason I kept them in, because I could go into those and edit between the pause of the frame and the end of the frame, and it would make it look seamless. It would still jump, because the human eye is amazing, but it would be a lot more seamless than it is. And the whole reason I didn't do that, guys, is because I wanted to be completely clear and transparent about saving. This is not Chris beats Quake on 1 HP, 1 life, 1 attempt, on his first attempt, and is the best gamer in the world. This is just an average dude enjoying Quake and covering Nightmare for people that might think it's intimidating. That's all this is, guys. It's not meant to be like a big waving my dick. I hate this moment, by the way. This door here, there's an ogre in this, and there's a Death Knight, and this particular combination of enemies when you're trying to climb up here, very douchey. Probably my least favourite aperture in the whole game, that one. It's difficult to bounce grenades in too, but I'm just using the Thunderbolt because I've got it. And a piece of advice as well, guys, if you're anything like I am, I save these super weapons for this situation when I'm going to need them, and then I forget to use them. So just use it, just have fun with it. It's a really good gun, and every so often they give you replenishments for it so you can use it again. And you can save it for Shamblers if you want to kill Shamblers really quickly. You can save it for, you know, putting down the Fiends if you want to just get rid of those guys. Or you can just intersperse it with your different moves and different weapon choices. One thing you must do, though, and be very careful of, do not use it underwater. Or in the water, right? I think you can do it at the top of the water, but you can't do it in the water. Obviously, it is an electric gun, and it instantly kills you if you do that, which I think is hilarious. And secondly, be very careful shooting through your guns in water. Because if you run out of your weapon and the game automatically changes to the next weapon, I noticed it always puts the Thunderbolt on. And the amount of times where I've been holding the trigger and shooting like the super nail gun, I've run out of nails, I've fired the electric gun and I've instantly killed myself, is a lot higher than you'd think. I've probably done it maybe 10 to 15 times. And I honestly couldn't tell you why it works like that, but it totally does. And another thing as well, guys, if you see a moment in the video where the video goes all weird but you can still hear the game, that is just a capture problem with OBS when it encodes. Happens every so often. I usually re-record stuff to try and get rid of things like that, but every so often there's one that slips through the net, so I do apologise in advance. I could remedy it by getting an internal capture, which could be a pretty good idea in the future, but right now, I'm not doing too much recording, you know, I'm doing a lot more streaming, and streaming never has any issues with that stuff usually. This bit here is very difficult as well. A lot of close quarters, and it makes your explosives dangerous options, but you want to use them because they're so strong. And I do have a decent amount of armor here, so hopefully it will give me the barrier I need to be crazy with explosives. But look at this. You don't really have anywhere to go, and you're being assailed by ogres on all sides. So be real careful with these grenades. And of course, if you're just doing this for the achievement and you're struggling, guys, save a lot. The more you save, the easier you'll have. The easier time it will be. I think I'm going the wrong way. You've got to go all the way up the 3 levels. Am I going to pick something up? No, I'm going the wrong way here, guys. I do apologise. I remember this level because I oftentimes go the wrong way. You need to interact with stuff in those floors that open up the next floors above. And then when you do all 3 floors, it lets you go to the next zone. So, did I press that button? No, you've got to do the... There you go. That's what I should have done. Press the button, and then it enables you to get past the bars. And then you come up here, and there's going to be some fiends. And claustrophobic fiends, I don't need to tell you how dangerous these creatures are. My favourite combination for the fiends is super nail gun into super shotgun and then back and forth. You can put out so much DPS with that, it's absurd. And you don't have to worry about self-damage, because you don't hurt yourself with those guns. But there's the Death Knight, put him down. And then in this room here, there's going to be just a gaggle of these guys. So I'm going to spam some grenades against the wall, bounce some grenades in there, get some splash damage, get the nice jib, fire the rocket. And be careful of fiends as well. This is one of those zones where you'll go into a room like that, you think it's clear, and then there's a sneaky fiend just like curled up in a corner somewhere. And because his pathfinding is terrible at times, you can use that to bully him. But just be real careful. Because we're getting to the point now where the game is going to start doing some dangerous, cheeky traps. Like, look at this. Double fiends, tiny room. Look how bad this is. I got so lucky then. And then I get wrecked by a chainsaw. But the joys of Quake, you kind of stick in there, you spam enough explosives, and hopefully you get the job done. And then your capture device dies a whole bunch, which is nice. But we got it done. Hopefully that the encoding doesn't go on for too long. Chopping out like crazy right there. I'm curious as well, guys. You know when you watch a video and it has some kind of encoding problems on it like that, where they happen like fleetingly in a certain part and then they happen a ton on another one? Does it bother you? Does it take you out of the video all that much? I know it can be really frustrating. As a creator, it's the worst thing to see. I hate seeing it. It makes me sad. And it makes me sad because you're missing out on something that I've curated and I've made in such a way that I want you to see, you know. I want you to see it all. I don't want you to see some fucking choppy slideshow bullshit. It's mad annoying, that. But I wonder if it's ever been the straw that broke the camel's back and you had to click off because it's like, this is disgraceful, you know. But it's one of those things you really can't help it, and I try a whole host of things to mitigate it at the moment. One of the easiest ways is to not record too long. It used to happen to me on my old capture setup when I recorded way too long sessions, so I used to limit the time. And I limited these videos to instancing them, so each level is its own recording. I didn't do multiple levels on the same recording going and did like an hour chunk. I didn't do it like that. And it has nothing to do with the quality of my PC as well, because my PC's components right now are fucking sick. I think it's just the codec inside of OBS is good, but there's still a little bit of work to be done when you're pushing, you know, the higher qualities. And I've messed with the settings and I've tried a bunch of stuff, and it's one of those things where sometimes it doesn't work and sometimes it does, you know. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it never does. But fingers crossed we'll have a lot less of it, and it was just a particular moment where my CPU spiked, maybe. I'll be really interested to see as well, when I do get a second PC, where I can do capturing on the PC and then my game can run the game and there's no conflict there, there's no CPU doing a lot of heavy lifting that it doesn't need to do. I wonder if that will have much of an effect on, if it is a bottleneck of some sort. Speaking of a bottleneck as well, this is an interesting sequence, and there's almost no sequence like this in the game. They drop you in this tiny room, which is this slow-moving elevator, and then they force you to fight a bunch of dangerous dudes, and then there's a trap as well. So I think the wave it's something like 2 shamblers, then they spawn a fiend, then there's the nail traps, and then I think it's a bunch of zombies, and then afterwards there's something bad at the bottom as well. Because I got this on second attempt. The first attempt I cleared the whole elevator, and then when I got off the elevator, whatever spawns then killed me. And it was a touch frustrating, because you know when you do it right, and you do the hard part, and then you get killed by the lame part? And I didn't want to save either. You could easily just save here and get this shit done if you wanted to, but I wanted to do it on one sequence. You know, I'm not quite the people that want to do the level on one attempt, and when they die they restart the level, because that to me that's a bit much. And I did save them because I thought that was the end of this phase. But there was one more zombie behind me. But you see that door over there? That door recedes. And then once it finishes receding, there's a big old problem waiting for you. And it's a creature known as a Vor. So this is the first instance of seeing this guy. And this guy's actually really interesting. So this Eldritch terror fires a projectile that moves incredibly quickly and is sentient. So it will chase you, and it will navigate the world better than the fiends do to find you. And you have to put something between you and it to detonate it, or it will just strike you in the mouth. Very dangerous, and we're going to see those guys from now on. But that is the end of episode 2. Thank you for watching, and you take care now.